Welcome friends, I'm Sarah with Cleopatra's Crochet, and in this video tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make these citrus coasters. If you change the color, you can make a lemon, lime, grapefruit, or orange, all following the same pattern. I also have a PDF download version of both the coaster and a larger version, which can be used as a pot holder. So whether you prefer to make the pot holder or you simply prefer to work off of a PDF, check the link down in the description where you can find the pattern bundle for both the coaster and the pot holder all in one. For this project, we need a stitch marker and tapestry needle, some sort of scissors, and a 4.5mm crochet hook. We also need yarn in 3 different colors. For the lime that I'm going to make today, I need a dark green, a light green, and a white. I'm going to use Lion Brand's 24/7 cotton, which is a 100% mercerized cotton that is a medium weight 4. It's especially important that you use natural fibers when making the pot holders because they can protect your hands against heat. If you use something like acrylic yarn or any sort of synthetic yarn, there's a potential that the fibers could melt when exposed to extreme heat. The design of these pot holders is double layered, specifically to protect your hands against heat. Cotton yarn also has the ability to absorb water, so it'll make a great coaster because it can actually protect your surfaces. Let's get started with a magic ring. I'm going to loop twice around my fingers. I'm going to take my crochet hook and slide under the 2 loops that I just made, picking up the working yarn and pulling through, twist, come above the 2 loops of the magic ring, and pull the working yarn through to create a slip knot. Now let's adjust, give ourselves some more yarn, and I'm going to make 6 single crochets on this magic ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, a lot of times when you tighten it down, this first stitch gets kind of buried or lost. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 6. I'm going to take my crochet hook and slip it through this first stitch before I tighten down. Pulling this tail lets me know which of the 2 loops to tighten first. There we go. Now, to close this magic ring, I'm going to make a slip stitch and a chain 1, but I also need to do a color change. So we slip through, instead of slip stitch with the white, grab the green, and perform that slip stitch and chain 1. Now this is loose, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten this and pull these to the inside. And row 2 increases all the way around 6 times, so you end up with 12 stitches at the end. First increase, second increase, third increase, fourth increase, fifth, and 6. Now this was the slip stitch to connect the round. I'm going to go ahead and pull this tight, put down my hook, and tie these 2 strands into a knot. And it looks like the tail from my magic ring ended up on the right side of the coaster. And just slip my hook through and just pull that to the wrong side. So all the tails are on the wrong side. For round 3, the pattern is single crochet and increase repeated 6 times. I'm going to slip stitch and chain 1 to close the previous round. So our first single crochet, I'm going to add a stitch marker so that I can find this stitch later to close the round. And now an increase. And I'm going to repeat 6 times, or 5 more times, the single crochet and increase, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. We've made it to the end of round 3. I'm going to remove my stitch marker, making a slip stitch and chain 1. The pattern for row 4, or round 4, is 2 single crochets and then an increase, repeated 6 times. So that's my first single crochet. I'm going to put a stitch marker, second single crochet, and an increase. Repeat that 5 more times, and I'll meet you at the end of round 4. At the end of round 4, you should have 24 stitches. I'm going to slip stitch again and chain 1 and make my first single crochet, putting my stitch marker back in. For round 5, the pattern is 3 single crochets and an increase. So I've made my first single crochet, second and third, and now an increase. Once again, repeat 5 more times, and I'll meet you at the end of round 5. At the end of round 5, we have 30 stitches. I'm going to slip stitch and chain 1, making my first single crochet again. So I can just put my stitch marker right back on. Now for round 6, we're going to do a bit of a shift. The pattern should be 4 single crochets and then an increase. However, if you notice, your work is starting to get bits of a point because all of our increases are being made at the same exact section each time you go around. So if you continue making the increases, it's going to look more like a hexagon each time you go around. I want a more perfect circle than that, so I'm going to shift the pattern by half. What do I mean by that? Instead of doing 4 single crochets and an increase, to start, I'm going to do 2 single crochets. I'm going to do my increase now. And then I'm going to pick up again with 4 single crochets and an increase. And what that does is instead of an increase here and here, it's going to split it and put the increase in the middle. And then it'll round out your shape much better. So I've done 2 single crochets and an increase. I'm going to do 4 single crochets and an increase. There's my increase. And then repeat 4 single crochets and an increase. When you get to the end, instead of having an increase to finish the round, you're just going to have 2 single crochets. So I'll show you, I'll keep doing 4 single crochets and an increase, and we'll get to the end of round 6. I've just completed the last increase of round 6, and as you can see, you've got 2 more single crochets left to go. You should have 36 stitches, and again, I'm gonna slip stitch, chain 1, and make my first single crochet, putting my stitch marker back on. For round 7, we're going to go back to the original pattern and make 5 single crochets and an increase. I've made my first single crochet, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Here's an increase. Repeat 5 more times, and I'll meet you at the end of round 7. Round 7 is now complete, and we need to do another color change. So instead of doing my slip stitch and chain 1, I'm going to cut the green yarn, switch back to white. I'm going to make that first slip stitch and chain 1 with the white yarn, tightening down, and chain 1, and bring these around to the wrong side, out of my way, make that first single crochet, and I'm going to pause and tie these strands into a knot and put my stitch marker back on. And the pattern for round 8 is 6 single crochet and an increase, but once again on the even rounds we're going to adjust the pattern, shifting halfway. So I'm going to do 3 single crochets and then my first increase to make that shift. 1 single crochet is already done with this white. Here's 2 and 3, increase now, go back to making 6 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and an increase. Repeat until you get back to the start, and you know that you've done it correctly if you have 3 single crochets after your last increase to end the round. And I'll meet you at the end of round 8. I'm nearing the end of round 8. I've made my last increase, and I have 3 more single crochets to go because of the pattern adjustment. 1, 2, and 3. And once again, we have another color change coming. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and again, I'm going to make that slip stitch and chain 1 with the new color. This time it is dark green. And let's tighten down what we've got going on here. Pulling our tails to the wrong side of our work. Make our chain 1. And our first single crochet. It's a bit tight, but it'll fit. And put our stitch marker back on. And that's our last color change. For round 9, the pattern is 7 single crochets and an increase. Once again, repeated 6 times. So I'm going to make the first one with you. This is the second single crochet, third, 4, 5, 6, and 7, followed by an increase. Okay, and now finish the round, and I'll meet you at the end. Now that I've finished round 9, this is the end of this circle, and I need you to make a second one. So look down in the description of this video for the timestamps and go back to the beginning of round 1. Repeat all the same steps to make yourself a second copy, and I've gone ahead and already done that. Then come back to the timestamp for the surface crochet. That's how we're going to add these details of the wedges of the citrus fruit. And if you've never done surface crochet, don't worry about it. It's quite easy, and I will show you how to do that in this video. The other important thing that you need to know is that I want you to leave your green yarn attached when you've made your second circle, and just put a stitch marker in so that it doesn't unravel on you, because once we've completed all the detail work of the surface crochet and made both of our halves, we're going to put the wrong side of our work with all those ugly tails towards each other and crochet around using that same working yarn, which is why you don't want to cut it, to stitch the two together so you don't have to sew it. Before we get started surface crocheting, there's a lot of tails in the way. So these 4 from the color change, I'm just going to weave in a little bit so that I don't have to deal with them. These 2 strands from the magic ring and from the first color change actually look like they're long enough that I can surface crochet with them, so I'm not actually going to trim these 2. To surface crochet, you need to turn your work to the right side. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick up your yarn from the wrong side and pull it up in a loop into a slip stitch. Now, we need to figure out where we're going in order to make these little wedge lines. You can see there's the 6 original stitches from your magic ring, and you're going to pull up for the 6 spokes of the wedge divides. You're going to pull up a line in each of these original 6 single crochets from the magic ring of round 1. So I'm going to select one around this transition point, and I'm going to start using this tail from our original magic ring. So I'm going to loop it around my hook and look at the right side and pull it up. So you just got to loop on your hook. Now, you're going to go directly out in a line. So I'm going to put my hook down 1 stitch over, loop it around the hook, and pull up a second loop. And this is where the slip stitch comes in. You just slide it through like that. So again, we're going to go straight out. Just kind of find your way. Sometimes it's a bit stiff, and that's okay. Loop the yarn around your hook, pull through, and then pull through again. That's your slip stitch. Where are you going? You're going directly out. So we're going to go down 1, loop the yarn around the hook, pull up, and slip stitch. 1 stitch out, yarn around the hook, pull up a loop, slip stitch. 1 stitch further, yarn around the hook, pull up a loop, and slip stitch. And I'm going to stop with the white. And it looks like our tail was just barely long enough. So for this last one, I'm going to pull through and tighten down to form a knot. And then I'll pull my hook through from the wrong side of the work and just pull that tail through to the back. And we have our first surface crochet detail. For the next one, and all further ones, you just need to cut yourself a length of yarn, make it about 18 inches or so that you have enough to work with. You're not going to put a slip knot or any sort of knot in it. And for the second one, I'm just going to pivot my work and work directly opposite the first surface crochet detail so that I can have even divisions as I work my way around. So we're going to look at that original 6 stitches of your magic ring, and the one opposite it, if you just go into that stitch right there, you're ready for your next one. So again, I don't have a knot, but I'm going to leave myself a couple inches of a tail so I can tie it later. I'm going to wrap around the hook and pull up a loop, insert my hook into the next stitch out, wrap yarn around my hook, pull up a loop, and make it into a slip stitch. And again, I'm working directly out from that first line of surface crochet. And I'm going to stop at the white to hide the transition line. And I see that this has gone a little wonky. It's no longer straight. So I'm going to back it up a couple stitches. And instead of going here, I'm going to go here. And that's a lot more straight. See, I have enough tail. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that all the way through and tighten down to form a knot. Insert my hook from the back and pull the tail to the wrong side of the work. Okay, now go ahead and add 4 more divisions of surface crochet to create your remaining wedges. And again, you're looking to start in each of these 6 original stitches from round 1 that were on the magic ring, and then just work directly out. I finished the last of the surface crochet details, and instead of weaving in all of these ends, what I'm going to do is just knot 2 tails together all the way around and then just cut the yarn, because when you sew the 2 halves together, then nobody's going to be able to see it anyways. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to take these 2, because they're right next to each other, and just make a double knot, tighten it down, trim off the excess. I'm going to do the same thing with these center ones. I'm just going to separate out 2 at a time that are right next to each other and make a knot. And now we are ready to go ahead and finish up our coaster. To attach the 2 halves together, I'm going to take both wrong sides and just tuck all those little strands to the inside and face them towards each other. Now I like to kind of line up the lines of the surface crochet so that they're together. And we're going to go ahead and remove our stitch marker. And you can see here that I put a slip stitch in. I'll show you the back side, but I never put a chain 1 in. I'm going to go ahead and put that chain 1 in now. And you're just going to work your way around 1 stitch for 1 stitch, making single crochets all the way around. So I'm going to go through the first half, and then I'm going to go through the second half, and I'm going to pull up a loop and then make a single crochet. That's the first one. And then again, I'm just going to repeat it for both halves. 1 stitch to 1 stitch. You have the same number of stitches on each round because you followed the same pattern. Pull up a loop and make a single crochet. Show you another one. Go through the first and then go through that corresponding single crochet on the second half. Pull up a loop and make a single crochet. And now I'm going to keep working my way around, and I'll meet you back at the front, and I'll show you how to finish it off. I've made it to the end, and I just have a last couple of stitches left to go. And it gets a little bit tight for these last couple, but you just keep finding your way. And we're gonna pick up this one. And then, let's see, this one hasn't been worked into anything. And on this last one, I'm just gonna do a slip stitch, cut myself a length of yarn, pull through to knot, and I'm gonna go ahead and weave in this tail. Using that tapestry needle. So I'm going to, that first stitch, I'm gonna split it and go through the middle of that V. Just pick up a couple like this. Give it little tugs to adjust. And then I'm gonna keep weaving it in within the green stitches of the coaster to just hide this tail, so that I know it's not going to come undone later on. I'm just going to tuck it in between the two halves. Just going to push my needle through, pull it out. And you can see it's just got a tiny little end. So we're going to hide that in the center between them. And there we go. We have a reversible lime coaster. If you made it all the way to the end of this tutorial, I want to say thank you so much for watching and let you know that coming up next, I've been working on a cream pie version of coasters and pot holders. So you've got pumpkin, you've got lemon meringue, key lime, and strawberry. And my next video tutorial for a coaster will be these once the pattern has dropped. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on this next pattern drop.